Okay, good afternoon, good morning, good evening to all of you joining us today. Thank you so much for joining. We're just going to give it a few more moments for other people to connect to the call, and then we'll get started. Okay, we have lots to get through today, so I am going to make a bit of a swift start, and whoever else can join will hopefully join us as we've just begun. So thank you all so much for joining our webinar this afternoon, evening, morning. We're wanting to focus on what do UK medical schools look for in their international applicants. And we think this is a really, really important webinar to have, especially for the international student application pool, because there are often some differences and nuances to those applications that warrant specific support and guidance as opposed to the general pieces of advice and information. So we are here today to do that. So let's begin with just a quick introduction from myself before I introduce you to our co-panelists for today. So my name is Hayley Bendel, and I am a senior university advisor for the Medic Portal, which is part of the Dukes Plus family of consultancies. My experience and background is in high school counselling. I have been a trusted advisor for thousands of high school students on their journeys to university across the world. Personally, I've helped over 500 students be successful in gaining positions in medical schools in the UK and overseas, and I have personally supported both home and international fee status applicants. So I come with a wealth of experience and knowledge in this area that I'm happy to share with you today. And further to my role as this university advisor, I also qualified teacher and careers leader, so supporting students in schools and personally for their career planning and trajectories from post A levels to beyond. That's a bit about me. I'm also delighted to introduce you to Professor Kay Mohanna as well. Kay, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. I hope it's not the middle of the night where all you guys are. I'm a practicing clinician. That's my real job. And in my spare time, I run admissions at the Three Counties Medical School, where I'm the program director and the head of department. So I bring real world clinical knowledge to the scenario. And also I'm an educationalist. So we're particularly pleased to be working together with you on this today.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Kay. Much appreciate your time. And I'm sure the students will have lots of questions that we can talk through. And on that note, if you do have any questions today, please feel free to use the chat function or the Q&A box as well. And I'll be very happy to keep an eye on the chat box and answer either directly, or we'll flag it as a verbal discussion that we have towards the end of our presentation slides. So without further ado, I just want to introduce you to our plan of attack for today, what we hope to go through. So we'll kickstart off with just a bit of an introduction to the UK medical education system for those that might just need a bit of an awareness as to how it is structured. Then towards life as a medical student and tuition and living costs and what universities are kind of looking for amongst all of this, before we move very swiftly onto the actual pragmatics of application, which is really where those nuances do appear and then can help you to amplify your chances of success by being aware of how to navigate these and be the strongest possible candidate. We'll then have an opportunity throughout to speak with Kay. I'll ask her some questions about her experience and her insight there in Three Counties Medical School. But certainly then at the end, Kay is going to do a little spotlight for us on just getting to know a bit more about this university and what it can offer you. At the end, we'll have an opportunity for you to show you how you can get in touch with us in the Medic Portal for even more advice and guidance after today, and then we'll have the questions and answers. So let's quickly move on then to the UK medical education system as a whole. So the first step we need to make sure when choosing a medical degree is making sure that you understand the different stages that you could access this. So in the United Kingdom, there's typically two routes the two major routes into medicine. One is at the undergraduate level, so namely you finish high school, you gain your A levels, your IB, or other qualifications, and you're then able to automatically progress from high school to a A100 program, or otherwise known as undergraduate medicine. Now, of course, you'll need to have those successful applications to make that possible, but it's great because it's not that common around the world. There are still many, many countries that need the graduate entry medicine program. So students finish high school and then would have to go on to study a different degree first. Sometimes biomedical sciences or similar, but that they need to wait until they're aged 22, give or take, to then actually start medicine. Now, that still remains a choice here as well in the country. We do have places that do both of these. We also have universities that are only graduate entry medicine. So it's really important to be aware of those differences to make sure that when you are starting your research and wanting to shortlist your final destinations, you know that you are choosing the program that you are most eligible for. Generally speaking, there are currently around 40 medical schools available to choose from. Just be careful, however, about the eligibility criteria, not only by your age or stage of education, but also by domicile, because some are only open to UK students, others are only open to international students, but many of the others accept both categories, home students and international students. But something that's really, really important to be aware of is that there is a UK government quota which does cap the number of international students that are able to enroll at medical schools, which is at 7.5%. So in simplistic terms, if a university has 100 spaces for medicine, then only 7 can go to non-home students. So it's a really, really competitive and rife application and selection process, which really means that being ahead of the game, coming to webinars like these to inform yourselves and know how to strategize and then amplify those chances of success is really, really important. Once you have done your degree, I just wanted to flag just quickly here about what the new norm looking forward will look like. So following your graduation from medical school, you'll enter your foundation program phase. Now they are called resident doctors. Previously, and you might still find in your research and literature mention of junior doctor. It's the same, it's just resident doctor has become the new terminology discussed about graduate doctors. So this phase lasts 2 years, otherwise known as FY1 and FY2, and it helps to bridge everything that you've learned in theory from your medical degree and translate that into practice in on-the-job training in 6 different rotations across different specialties. Kay will have a lot more knowledge of this than I will, so any specific questions, feel free to mention about them in our questions and chat later on. But I did just want to raise this as a piece of information for today because I do have lots of international students asking me every year about post-graduation possibilities for work with visa requirements, for example, or just what is possible to become a fully registered doctor in the UK. So feel free, if you do have questions, to get in touch with us later on and we can go through those in turn. But going back towards what we really are here for today, which is medical school itself, I wanted to just pivot back towards life as a medical student and what that does mean for international students. So it's a bit about acclimatizing to what a UK medical school is like, what the medicine degree teaches you and what you might experience. And it might be a bit different from other systems that you've been aware of through your experience and research. But UK medical schools typically employ a combination of lectures, so big auditorium rooms, seminars being slightly smaller groups for discussion. There could be practical skill simulations, dissections or prosections, clinical examinations, as well as simulations of patient communication. So lots and lots of different ways of learning. And as you'll do your reading and your shortlisting of the universities, you'll begin to see how UK universities categorize their teaching styles with a particular name or ethos. Most of our UK universities identify as an integrated curriculum, Others might identify as a traditional or problem-based learning curriculum. I won't go into too much detail about this. We cover this in many other webinars that the Medic Portal do. But in a nutshell, traditional is the older way of learning. It's lots of lectures, lots of hearing from professors in big auditoriums and hearing from the teachers and note-taking. Problem-based learning is almost the other side of the coin. It is very student-led, discussion-focused in small groups. Integrated is somewhere in the middle of that. So that's just a very quick nutshell about how a UK university teaches. And depending on where you apply to, this is the kind of student that they are going to be looking for. So it's going to be demanding, and type of learning is going to be quite an important thing to reflect upon to make sure that you have the best possible transition to medicine. Because let's face it, studying medicine is not going to be easy, but medical schools do acknowledge this and do really encourage opportunities for extracurricular involvement. So getting involved in clubs and societies in university as a means of a healthy work-life balance. Kay, I'd love to just have a quick introduction about Three Counties and how Three Counties kind of exists amongst these kind of teaching styles, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. So the Three Counties Medical School, you're probably already aware if you've done your homework, is one of the newest medical schools in the UK. We haven't yet graduated a full class. We are under very close scrutiny from the General Medical Council. But we had the absolute joy and privilege of setting up from scratch with a blank piece of paper, really. And we chose problem-based learning. So our curriculum is a fully integrated PBL course. The whole week is structured around the cases that you will meet on a Monday morning. Maybe there's 2 or 3 cases. Then those cases trigger the learning outcomes for the week. And then on a Friday, your own particular small group of 8 or 9 PBLers will come back together to make sure you've done that. In the week, as it goes along, we schedule supportive learning activities that are designed to work towards you solving those learning outcomes. So in the 14th century, when I was at medical school, you would do 2 years in a library and you never went near a patient, and you would do anatomy, biochemistry, pure sciences, and then you would have to try and figure out how to apply that to patients in the last 3 years. Here, you'll be learning anatomy, physiology, biochemistry, pharmacology, communication skills, and social advocacy all at the same time around a case. So it's a bit full on, but it does mean that when you get out into the workplace, when you're confronted with a patient and you don't really know what's going on, you've got a process in your mind about how you might tackle that, what to do when you don't know what to do. And those skills are just as important as the knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a growing number of universities employing PBL as their teaching mechanism moving forward, which is an interesting thing. What Kay was mentioning there about the anatomy, physiology, all of those different lectures, that really is the traditional focus versus how Three Counties employ all of that now in their casework on a kind of a class-by-class basis. So very different styles. We have lots of information about this on our website, so please do go on the Medic Portal's website and you'll get to see even more detail about what those teaching styles mean. But it's definitely important food for thought when looking at choosing your universities that suit you most. And just moving on to a very quick note about the tuition and living costs before we move into the pragmatics, because studying as an international student in the UK has a very hefty price tag. What universities look for in this context are students who are able to fully fund the tuition fees upright, because there are very, very limited scholarship or bursary fundings for international candidates for this programme. Medicine programs are very, very competitive and therefore don't need scholarships to lure students, which unfortunately does mean then that the expectation is often self-funding. And the costs for different medical schools do vary. There is no standardized nationwide cost. So if this is a consideration for you and family, it'll be important to check this out. Just to give you some 3 illustrative examples, when I last looked at some medical school tuition fees, We had places like Leicester that had differentiated pricing depending on the stage of the programme. So it was cheaper in the first 2 years than £18,000 more for the final 3 years. You might have places like King's, which have one universal cost across all years, but also quite notably more expensive. And then other places like Cambridge, which is the most expensive at the time of my last research and writing this, but they also then employed a college fee on top. So where you see the tuition fees, always look out for some hidden extras, because for Cambridge's case, it is another approximate 12 to 14,000 per year for the 6 year duration of the programme. And bearing in mind that if you are thinking of multiple countries and multiple destinations, this cost for the UK is just the tuition. It does not include accommodation or food or anything like that that other countries bring together in one tuition. So this means that you'll have these tuition costs to pay, moving then into the living costs. So the maintenance, the ability to live, to eat, to socialize. And just wanted to give you a bit of a geographical awareness for those who aren't too aware of the geography of the UK. Some of our most expensive areas for cost of living will be in London and the southeast of England. And then moving towards places like the Northern Ireland, Wales, East Midlands, that's where it gets a little bit more accessible. So if this is a consideration for you, then you might want to look at websites like I've indicated there, to just consider the different lifestyle differences, the differences in cost, therefore, of living in such a metropolitan kind of capital city, or perhaps a more relaxed, smaller city elsewhere that might offer a more accessible quality of life. So that was just a very quick introduction to just give you some context to the experience of being in the United Kingdom, which I think is actually really, really important to know to make sure that applying is therefore a sensible and suitable choice. Kay, is there anything else that you'd like to offer there about the experience of kind of being in the UK, being in your medical school, that you think international students would benefit from knowing before they apply?
Only to echo what you said, Hayley, just really make sure that you can afford this. Worcester fees are the same for each of 4 years, 49,300, just the tuition. And all the time we are helping students apply to charities, trying to find bursaries, and they are for international students, very few.
Yeah.
And also the other thing to bear in mind, as Hayley said, is about hidden costs. Are you going to have to go out on placement? If you're in
Yeah.
London and you can get an Oyster card and go on the tube, that's one thing. In a rural area like ours, where there are more sheep than people and not any buses and tubes to speak of, are you going to need a car? Are you going to need to carpool with friends? These are all extra costs. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chaos. That's a really important thing to think about, not just the numbers you see on the websites, but to then think about all of
Yeah.
those logistical things later on. Thank you so much for that. Okay, we're going to move then into the application nuts and bolts, and what do international students need to be mindful of as they begin to place these applications to different medical schools. So the system that we use, perhaps you are aware of this, but if you're not, the website that you will be using to place your applications is called UCAS. And on this, all applicants, whether they are international or home students, you have 5 choices in total to be able to place 5 different courses and universities. But for medicine, there will be a limit to 4 medical schools plus a 5th choice. So what I mean by that is that UCAS and the universities recognise that medicine is a very, very competitive and selective process. So they want to ensure that there is an ability to ring fence a backup plan. So you are then able to use 4 out of those 5 choices, or up to 4 of those 5 choices for medicine, like those A100 or A101 programs. And then that 5th choice is something that is not medicine, but can be related to medicine or can be something entirely different. So commonly programs like biomedicine, medical sciences, genetics, psychology, these kinds of programs often act as that security net for students and can form that fifth choice. I personally have advised, as you know, thousands of students over the years, and I genuinely can say that I have seen fifth choices being physics, journalism. It is absolutely possible to do that as long as you consult with the university and ask them, would they be willing to accept an alternative personal statement for that fifth choice program? And in the event they do say yes, then it completely frees up your opportunity to apply to a subject that you really otherwise do enjoy, rather than relying on the strength of your medicine application and personal statement for a slightly related program. But nonetheless, the focus of today is to think about its four choices. And most of the medical schools you'll have to apply through via UCAS, but there are some direct application universities available to you as an international student. UK students, in almost all cases, have to use UCAS, so they really do have four. But for international students, there are a growing number of universities opening and available to international students, and they haven't yet made it formal that they have to only apply through UCAS. So what I mean by that is that you are able to apply directly to these universities through their websites. So that means you can have the four choices on UCAS and then maybe even add more by applying directly through a website, which is it's brilliant news for you to just give you more opportunities to be successful, given that you know that there is that 7.5% quota. So statistically speaking, the chances are just giving you more opportunity for success. It will still be important to check those entry requirements, however, because it might still need all of the different facets, like the admissions test, like your entry grades, for example, but still very, very worthwhile knowing so that you can then strategize as much as possible which ones need to go on UCAS and which ones could you access by going directly instead. There are some really useful resources out there, and when you receive, you can ask the slides of this, we can get these sent out to you for these web links, but you'll be able to see the amount of spaces available in different universities. So the Office for Students lists the different England medical school providers, and you'll be able to see the amount of spaces available for different fee statuses for medicine and for dentistry, because it's all in one page. But what you can see here is looking at, for example, we've got home applicants per space at 5, and then there's international applicants per place. The statistics of this comes to 17.6, whereas home applicants per place, as you bring this all together, is 6. International applicants per space can be as high as 20. That is just giving you an idea as to the complete ratio differences between home and international students. So no matter what this data says, you will be the most competitive, not because you're looking at these numbers and you're trying to play a game with the statistics, but where you are genuinely choosing a university or collection of universities whose admission policy favors what you are able to offer as strengths. So it's not looking exclusively at this data set thinking, how can I have the best chance of getting a place? Because if everybody did that, it's going to completely drive the competition up. But these universities do have priorities and different strategies of how to select their medical school students. And that is how you will really showcase yourself at the best. So I'll go into this in a bit more detail, but Kay, do you have anything what would you say is the top of mind consideration for you as you are reading the applicants there at Three Counties?
Well, I'd kind of quite like them to know where Worcester was. You'd be surprised. Sometimes people apply and it's very obvious. So my first tip would be um, the medical schools that you're applying to, do them the respect of having done a little bit of research, know where the city is, know the characteristics of the city, whether it's rural or urban, know maybe something about the history, not in huge amounts of depth, but um, and then don't lie about it in the interview. None of you on this call would do that, but people say, "Oh yes, I really want to come to Worcester because I've heard great things about your graduates." Well, you haven't because we haven't got any graduates. Or I really want to come to Worcester because, and then the reason will be something ridiculous. And when I follow that up and say, well, when did you see that? When did you learn that? Have you been to Worcester? And it turns out they haven't actually been. So do your research properly. Now, it's not easy if you live in, a very long way away. You're not going to be able to pop over for the afternoon to have a look around. I do understand that. But there are lots of videos online. We do try to make resources available. So yeah, do a little bit of research. So if you're asked why do you want to come to Worcester, you can give an honest answer.
Yeah, that's really important. Thank you so much, Kay. I think that is something that I think on a nation basis, as well as someone that resides here in Wales at the moment, an appreciation of not just the city or where the university is located, but also the nation, because there are different devolved NHS or health boards. So knowing the constitution for England versus that of Scotland versus that of Wales and versus that of the HSC in Northern Ireland is really, really important as well. So that's definitely something to note as part of your reading and research before your interviews. So let's go back into the qualifications aspect first. So what when you're looking at the university websites, a lot of the language you're going to be reading about mentions GCSEs or A levels because these are the most common British patterned education qualifications. So it is a little bit frustrating. I'll say this as an experienced advisor for over a decade that I've been doing a lot of advocacy for international students to make it as clear as possible to them to know what is required. At the moment, we're still seeing that universities do have GCSEs as a requirement, but to varying extents. Some schools will just require GCSE or equivalent as like a minimum pass. Others will look at this key stage of education as a genuine, exclusive, or almost exclusive ranking for interview. So, for example, Cardiff University, they place almost full attention to how students achieved in their school at the age of 16. So, GCSEs or IB, MYP, for those familiar with that, not A levels, not the diploma of the IB, but that of the age of 16. That's quite surprising to some students that I speak with. They think that all that really matters is those future qualifications and the future exams that they're taking. And they do matter. That is really important because you do need to meet that minimum threshold to convert that conditional offer into a place. But for a lot of universities that rely on data, Kay and I were speaking at the beginning of the call before we started saying that medicine is so popular, there are so many applicants for places that data becomes increasingly so a very important factor. And GCSEs or equivalents are concrete. It has already been achieved. There is no prediction involved. And a number of universities are wanting to see these as concrete evidence and not hopes what teachers think you might get. But on that note, for A levels or equivalent, as I said, you still need to meet those predicted or achieved grades that you are down for this stage. In most places, if a university says that they require 3 A's, that is genuinely what they require. That is not a misleading statement to say that 3A stars is better. It really is a tick box exercise in most places. However, that there are some places that do place more attention to that. So like Cardiff places more attention on the GCSEs. Other places like Cambridge or Queen Mary, University of London, do place more emphasis on the A levels. So hopefully now you're starting to see just a little bit about that picture I was mentioning a few moments ago about finding what your strengths are and what kind of university would be able to be the best platform for you to show off your strengths to the most possible strength possible. Something for international students to be aware of course, is the English language proficiency. And I would always, always encourage that no matter what qualifications you've studied in what country, I would still advocate that students are prepared to take an English language assessment like the IELTS or TOEFL. There are often some GCSE subjects that can be counted, but a lot of the time there are more qualifications than not that are not considered due to a lack of a spoken endorsement. So if you do have a qualification in English, it might be applicable, but I would just be careful and be safe and just assume the need to work towards an IELTS. Because this genuinely is important. If you don't meet the English language requirement, then that will lead to an unsuccessful application or the conversion of offer to place, because this is a must for the visa process. Without the
Yeah, I
visa,
would I
you
would
can't come.
endorse that, Hayley.
Thank you.
Just to say that it's a visa requirement.
Yeah,
So it's outside of the control of the medical school. They
yeah.
will ask you for this. We have had people try to upload Duolingo certificates.
Doesn't work for
Um,
us, does it?
they they come from an English medium undergrad or an English medium high school, so they think that that's going to be exempt. It doesn't matter. If you need to firstly be on the list of a country that is considered to have English as a first language, and just being in an English medium school, unfair as we all know that sounds, it will not count. You will have to have IELTS for the visa and also the GMC. When you get to the end of medical school, you have to have IELTS proficiency. So you might as well get it now.
Yeah.
It's just relying on a GCSE in English, which you'll often need as well. Worcester asks for that as well. You have to have a good GCSE in English and maths, but
Yeah.
that's not sufficient.
Yeah. Thank you for echoing that. It's definitely something that I want to emphasize a lot today, because I've had some very upset students when they realized
Yeah.
too late that they needed an IELTS or similar. And it has to be in one sitting as well. And most, I mean, I think in every instance, kind of cross matching scores across different examinations doesn't constitute the grade. It has to be in one sitting. So make sure you give yourself enough time to ideally get the IELTS before the application. That's the easiest thing that universities would love most. But certainly enough time to make sure that by the summer you definitely meet those conditions to begin the visa process. But the biggest thing in, I'd say, a growing number of universities that are relying on the data is the elusive UCAT. So this is the admissions test. You might have been aware of this, and for those that are not aware of it, not a problem. I will be going through that in our next few slides. So the UCAT stands for the University Clinical Aptitude Test. It is required by almost all UK medical schools. There are some outliers available to international students, which is quite good news. It is an approximate 2-hour computerized test taken in test centres in over 100 countries worldwide. So it's often in places like Pearson testing centres, and it's where you will then have a computer, you'll have your own booth to be able to take this examination under timed proctored conditions. You must sit for this examination between around early mid-July to the mid-end of September of the immediate summer that you are then hopefully going to apply to medical school in the October. So it's something between year 12 and year 13, or grade 11, grade 12 in your systems. Please also be mindful that there is only one sitting opportunity per year. So unlike other examinations you might be aware of, like the SATs for America, there is no resit opportunity. So it is a one chance option. So please, please, please do read up about the UCAT and do access as much preparation as possible to give yourself the best possible chance of success in this. It is an aptitude test by name. And what that is doing is it's not testing your high school biology or high school chemistry. It's testing your natural aptitude and suitability and readiness for the skills that are determined to be super important for aspiring doctors. So, verbal reasoning, quantitative reasoning, aka quick mental math, decision making and logic, and situational judgment. So, putting yourselves in the shoes of a medical student or another professional and testing what would your response be to certain situations that you might encounter. As I've said already, different medical schools have different policies on this. Some will have almost exclusive focus on the UCAT and will rank students only by the UCAT score. So as long as they meet the minimum GCSEs and the minimum A levels and equivalents, what matters then is how well they did in that examination. By this point, they probably haven't even read the personal statement because they rely on the quantitative data to help them to shortlist. As you can then see, we go down in levels of emphasis from the ranking to maybe a points allocation for the amount of UCAT alongside the amount of points scored in the GCSEs or the A levels. So there's a bit of a calculation based system there. Some might have cut-offs, so they say, as long as you achieve over this score, we will consider you further. Others might only use it in borderline cases. So if there is two candidates after interview who are quite identical, maybe at that point they revert back to the UCAT to make that final determination. And then, as I said, there are a small pocket of universities that don't use the UCAT at all. So in a nutshell, to keep as many of your options open as possible, but to also give you an edge in these applications, to which there are tens of thousands of applicants every year, how you can make yourself the hopeful best candidate for that university is to focus so much on getting your potential highest score in the UCAT. Kay, do you have anything to highlight there about Worcester, about what you look for in terms of UCAT?
Yeah, so we accept UCAT or GAMSAT.
Okay,
So
nice.
we take either, and we are in the category that ranks by score. So we have a maximum of, let's say, this year about 80 places, and we have 1,500 applicants. So we almost never read the personal statements. You have to do it because UCAS requires it, and your fifth choice might want it. But a lot of medical schools don't start with a personal statement. So we rank your UCAT, and if you've also taken both, some people take both, we will rank them both, and you'll get in on the numerically highest one. But that's our first cut before we look at anything else.
Yeah,
Yeah.
brilliant. Just for clarity for those on the line, could you explain the GAMSAT and how that's different,
So
if
we've
any
got
way, to the UCAT?
it's considerably different, not least in cost. It's very expensive. It's the graduate entry medical selection test, and it's something like 6 hours of testing, and it does include a lot of basic science. So I think it's undergraduate biology level and A level standard chemistry and physics, and compares to the UCAT, which is a couple of hours with much more sophisticated sort of psychometric testing. The GAMSAT is very different. It's important in some schools, if you're a non-science graduate, they ask for GAMSAT because it enables them to make a judgment about your ability with science for the medical degree. But we will take either. There are loads that you'll have heard of the MCAT as well in America. If you're applying from America, American schools generally want that. Very few UK schools still take that. So very important to work out which medical school you want to apply for and then which aptitude score test to do.
Absolutely. And do you see any notable differences in how or what score you expect of international students versus home students in your
Well,
case?
so we don't expect and we don't set a threshold. We work the other way around. We rank and start at the top, and we select for shortlisting until we get that magic ratio you talked about before, which is something like 4-1 to interview for place.
Yeah.
And then we stop. And when we've got enough, that's the cutoff.
Mm,
So this year, the UCAT cutoff for home students was 1910, and it was lower For internationals, it was 1890. That's on the new UCAT numbers. The
Yeah,
GAMSAT, I'm just looking over there because I've got it stuck on my wall. The GAMSAT cutoff was 57 for home, and again, lower at 55 for internationals. And that's because we don't have, at Worcester, we don't have that 7.5% cap.
yeah,
So we can take up to 30 internationals for every 60 or 70 home students.
yeah. That's great. Thank you so much, Kay, for sharing that. Hopefully, it just gives you a bit more detail into a case study example. And if you've got any questions about that, then of course we'll feed that at the end. Just to contextualize what constitutes high, medium, low scores for the UCAT, what the Medic Portal suggests is for a high score to give you the best possible chances in some of the most competitive and popular universities. High scores, we would say, are usually in that top 20% band. But bearing in mind, for some of the most selective scores probably should be in the top 10%, particularly if international student, because spaces are so small and the application pool so big. So rule of thumb, the top 20%, the top 40% then, so 40 to 20 for a medium score, and then low scores then going down from that kind of 60th percent margin. Now, that's just a very quick rule of thumb, and that is generalistic. But if you look at different universities, they might have different perceptions because how they count the UCAT. Some places, as I mentioned, are so ranking focused. Others see it as a holistic addition to the selection process. So this really is just quite general, but what the message really is today is that a high UCAT really can mean that the sky is the limit. So one final thing from me is about the interview process and just helping you to acclimatize to this, because we do have some slightly quirky interview styles here in this country than what you might expect or have expected or experienced in your schooling so far. So once you get through the paper-based application and the admissions test, and as Kay said, the magic ratio is made and you are one of those people who are then interviewed, the interview style might be different. So in some universities, they still employ the usual traditional panel style interview, typically up to 30 minutes in length, perhaps two. I personally have never seen a 5-member panel, but usually I say it's about 2 or 3 people with yourself. And it could be admissions tutors, it could be doctors, professors, medical students, or even lay people. And in this interview, then you'll be there for the full duration answering a whole bunch of questions. A more novel style of interview nowadays is the group interview. So they want to assess not only your ability to have a panel interview and a one-to-one experience, which tends to follow, but also wants to see your group dynamic and how you contribute to communication and problem solving as a team. So a good emulation and simulation of what you would be like as a future medical student and hopeful doctor. And then something else we have are called the multiple mini interviews. And I think this is getting more popular in places outside of the UK at the moment, but it is really, truly quite unique. So I've tried to make a little bit of a diagram for you today to try to explain this. It's kind of like speed dating is how I describe it, where you basically have, in my very simple illustration, 5 stations, but usually 8 to 10 different stations or rooms. And let's assume you start at station number 1. Someone else might start at 2, 3, and so on. And in this station, you have a specific theme or question set. So you have a question asking about problem solving to begin with. So you might be given a prompt or a question. You might have 2 minutes to review that and think about your response. And then you are allocated a specific amount of time, usually between 5 to 8 minutes, where you are then providing your response only to that question. At the end of the time, where the timing is very strict, a bell goes and you are asked to move to the next station or to the next room. So then the whole process begins again, but this time you're with new people in a new room or station answering a new question. And that cycle goes around until you finish all of the different stations. So it gives an opportunity for you to, like, if you do a question and you feel a bit unsure of your response, or you think, oh, I didn't do well in that one, then with this MMI circuit, you can have a fresh start every time. You can shake it off and you can move to the next room and try to impress yourself with the next interviewer. But equally, as much as this is, I think, is an opportunity, it does cause a lot of uncertainty and worry among students who have never had to do anything like this before. But rest assured, as I said, our website is full packed of suggestions, tips, practice opportunities. So do just jump on our website and have a look. Kay, how does Worcester do their interviews? Are you an MMI utilizer, or are you more so panel or different?
So we are 100% online. We do everything using Teams.
Yeah.
So we do panel interviews because we are still linked in with our contingency partner in Swansea, and that's what they do.
Mm-hmm.
Two people panels, and then the Casper SJT, and
Yeah.
that's because we also accept GAMSAT, so we put in an extra SJT, and we have that run by Casper. So you have three stations. We are moving towards MMIs, but we can't do that until we break with Swansea.
Yeah. And contingency being Swansea, I think it might just be worth mentioning. So as Kay has said,
Oh
Worcester is
yeah,
a new
so yeah,
medical
yeah.
school. Yeah.
Mhm. So every new medical school, the General Medical Council links them up with a partner for your safety as students, in case something goes wrong. You might have heard, because many of you will be applying to other medical schools, that Chester is having a little bit of an issue with their General Medical Council approval, which is a good thing. It shows the process is robust, and their contingency partner, which is Warwick, is stepping in to help them. So it's good that there are contingency partners around, and certainly we've had a lot of help from Swansea, but it does mean you have to stay in step with them, because if the worst were to come to the worst, which has never happened in the history of new medical schools, but if the contingent partner had to take over, you'd have to be equivalent to their students. So we have to do things in an equivalent way.
Yeah. So in a nutshell, I believe if the worst did happen, then the contingency would be the degree giver in that at the end of the
Yes.
medical school. So there's
And
no
that's what's
risk at
happening.
all.
Yeah, that's what's happening at Chester. So Warwick will be the degree awarding body.
Yeah.
But it depends really what the aspect is that's at issue. So if I'm doing something wrong at admissions, then Swansea would help me with admissions. But if it was something to do with placement capacity, then it would have to be capacity of the placements in Swansea, and that would become a huge thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Brilliant. So I'm now going to hand over to Kay, just to go through in a bit more detail for you today, a bit more about the University of Worcester and its three counties medical school.
Thank you very much. So yes, we are the three counties of Herefordshire, Worcestershire, and Gloucestershire. And we are what the government calls a cold spot in terms of doctors. So the NHS in our area is under-resourced. So the medical school was born to try and do something about it. Thanks, Hayley. But despite being brand new and being very new to the Worcester Three Counties Medical School, we have about 200 years worth of expertise in the faculty. All the faculty have worked in different medical schools, and if you tot it up, I've certainly got 8 or 9 years at Keele Medical School before I came here, and it adds up to about 200 years. So the faculty have expertise. Also, the University of Worcester um, has a long-standing link with medicine. So this is the Charles Hastings building here in the middle. It used to be the local Worcester Infirmary Hospital, and it's named for Charles Hastings, who was a junior doctor in that hospital in about 1830, and it's the birthplace of the British Medical Association. So the BMA, which is the doctors' trade union, you might have heard them in the context of a lot of pay disputes recently. BMA supporting the junior doctors and then now the consultants to get pay resolution, was born in Worcester in 1832, in that very room that's on that slide. So if you're a history buff, Worcester, birthplace of the BMA. Thanks, Hayley. But it's new and modern now. The middle picture there, you can't quite see the title, but that's the University Arena. This is the place where the England Paralympic baseball team train. It's a disability enabled building. Worcester is very hot on this. You'll see a lot of wheelchair users, assistance dogs on campus, and that building there, the arena. I mean, I'm not a huge basketball fan, but I do know, I think they're called Worcester Wolves. That's their home. So on Fridays there's basketball. And that gold cladding is echoed in the photograph below, which is called the Hive. That's the first ever joint university local authority library. So that's your university student library, but you might go there and find a toddler reading group or a local artists exhibition. Over on the right is the medical school itself. And again, that's bling-tastic, I know, it looks a bit like a Toblerone, but that cladding is copper oxide. It's got it's huge green credentials because in addition to different ability students, we are also very hot on sustainability and healthcare. So even the building, which is a recycled building, used to be the Worcester Evening News print press, is clad in that oxide covering to make it very sustainable. The bottom left, that's the hospital again, the same hospital. It's no longer a hospital, it's teaching space. And the bottom right is just an internal diagram or internal photograph of the library. So new spaces, very green, as well as lots of history. Thanks, Hayley. It's a PBL course, which is augmented with resource carousel. So on a Monday, we set the cases that you've heard about. On the Friday, we make sure you've learned what you need to learn. And in the middle, we set up a resource carousel. That's my colleague Rachel. She's teaching there about histology. So one of the stations, a bit like the MMI principle, where you rotate round, one of them will be histology, another might be imaging, another might be a discussion group. So we're very privileged. We have a brand new building and lots of space to run the learning that we have allied to the learning outcomes. Thanks, Haley. We have all sorts of teachers. Some of these are patients or experts by lived experience, like the one maybe at the bottom who's allowing herself to be examined. They might be simulated patients. They might be clinic-based or classroom-based. The course is early contact clinical placements from the third week of year one, early and frequent clinical placements. So much of the time you'll be in settings like those. Thanks, Haley. It's a graduate entry course. You need to have a 2.1 upper division of a second class degree is all you need. If you have a 2.2, we'll still look at you so long as you've got a full master's, the full master's. And it can be in any topic. It can be in archaeology, it can be in modern foreign languages, it can be in science. A lot of our students are 19, 20 years old. They went after A level to do biomed sci. Maybe they didn't get in first time round. They come to us with a degree and their trajectory has been straight. Other people took a first degree in fine art or interpretive dance, went off and had a career and have come back. And I love it when that happens. We've got students who play in the Marine Marching Band as a musician. We've got students who have worked in industry, people who've got PhDs in oncology, and other people who are drama teachers, economists, any degree. We've talked about the UCAT or the GAMSAT. Either is fine. Make sure it suits your learning style. And then you will have 2 panel interviews plus the CASPER, this computer assisted assessment of something. I can't remember what it stands for. It's an SJT online. And then it's a 4-year course. Thank you. 4 years compressed. We also have specific Worcester preference criteria that doesn't really apply to international candidates, but just so that you know, if you are first in family or a refugee, we will give some preference for that. It's not numerical, it's weighted in a holistic assessment. This gives you an idea of some of the numbers out of the applications. 400 might work in the NHS, nearly 60 might come from the TCMS area. 25 or so might be University of Worcester graduates. Polar quintiles refer to areas of socioeconomic underperformance. So if a British student lives in an area, a poorer area, we give some credit for that. And lots of our applicants come from the lowest cut areas. Thank you. And this is really just to expand a bit on what Hayley was saying about MMIs. We will be moving to MMIs when we've figured out how to do it online. You might have to do a role play. You might go into a station that asks you to pretend that you work in a charity shop, and one Saturday, a lady comes in with some donations, and it turns out they are her dead husband's old clothes. That would be very difficult to manage. That might be a role play station. You might be given a professional judgment station. You find out that you're in clinic and a 13-year-old girl comes in requesting a termination of pregnancy. How might you manage that? There are prioritization stations, which are like the day from hell when you're trying to get to a mandatory lecture and you've got an assignment to hand in and five things all kick off at the same time. What are you going to do and how are you going to manage? You might be required to teach somebody something. Occasionally, calculation and data interpretation stations are still in MMIs. That's less common. And you might be given a sort of pseudo PBL station within the MMI. So those are some thoughts that will be replacing panel interviews. Panel interviews generally tend to be problem-solving issues, a bit like that 13-year-old, or you're leaving placement and you see the junior doctor and they appear to be drinking alcohol. What do you do? So they're problem-solving things. Or their aptitude ones, something about your preparation that's got you to this point. So I hope that's helpful. That's a little bit about Worcester. There's a QR code. If it's helpful, that'll take you to the website where you can read a lot more about it. And I really would recommend you read what's on the website. It's very obvious when people put us down and they don't know much about us. And it's not a great start. Thanks very much.
Well, thank you so much, Kay. Please do make sure to take a note there of the QR code for Worcester to find out lots more about that. But I just want to, again, thank Kay so much for coming today as well and entertaining the conversations we've had throughout this presentation. It's been hopefully really eye-opening to the students on the call today.
With pleasure.
But just remind you at the very end, as I said throughout, we really are here as a Medic Portal team to help you. We have an abundance of resources and recordings of webinars, as well as even more webinars coming up live in the future, as well as opportunities to learn more about mock UCAT examinations and personal statement support and everything else. So please do go onto our website, themedicportal.com, and have a look. And something that we're offering at the moment, which would be a huge, huge boost to you, is to join our complimentary calls. So we have a whole host of advisors on our team who are just willing to help during the summer when school is out to jump on a call with us for any questions, concerns, anxieties that you have. And having one of those meetings with us can hopefully point you in the right direction to learn how to amplify your chances then of becoming a doctor and a medical student, as well as an applicant now. So to access that, we have a second QR code, so please do feel free to take a note of this. This will take you directly to our booking page for our advisors to organise a call with you to go through any questions that you may have. You are also very welcome to contact us there on telephone or email on the left-hand side. I'll just keep that slide up for the final few moments, but I do just want to go to see if do we have any questions or chats that have come in since we've spoken. At the moment, Kay, I don't see any questions or chats, but I will keep an eye on it. Hopefully it means that we've made everything so clear that there are no questions. But we do have a few.
Or they've all gone home because I've bored them to tears. Can I just make a comment about getting in touch? Can I just advise you not to engage with other forms of social media, especially student room and informal gatherings of students, either by intentional design. Sometimes the information on those sites is not true. You want to come through Medic Portal or you want to come directly to your medical schools. Most medical schools will be happy to answer queries. And I think sometimes people feel a little bit embarrassed. They don't want to come to the medical school. They feel it'll have some impact on how we see you. We would rather you got full and proper information. And that's not always the case on, I don't know what you guys want now, Instagram or different. I'm so old, I
Absolutely.
don't even know what social media is out there, but you will know.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I think the universities themselves are the best for the most up-to-date factual information, particularly when it comes to when I speak with students about, what UCAT score do I need if there is a cut off. There are websites out there, but I think going straight to the factual sources like the universities themselves, or to us who do the rigorous assessments and the freedom of information requests, you can trust that information. Whereas, yeah, going on forums or chat rooms, it might be convenient. And obviously, there is a benefit of speaking with students sometimes who are there to find out about it, but it's the reliability of that source. So, yeah, thank you, Kay, for raising that.
Yeah. And
We have,
actually, we do. Yesterday morning, we had a webinar and we had medical students on it, an international student from Australia. And I'm sure she was more useful than anything I had to say. So
yeah,
if you look out for those, we would like to give you the opportunity to speak to students.
yeah, absolutely. We have had one question coming in, which is, what are the universities that then don't require the UCAT? So, from top of my head right now, putting me on the spot, I know that the University of Buckingham and University of Central Lancashire, or University of Lancashire, they now call themselves, they do not require the UCAT for international students. Now, this might change. Policies always change this time of year as we approach the new October deadline. But if they don't require the UCAT, they might do something themselves. So they might have their own internal assessments. Like you've heard, Worcester do employ a CASPER kind of examination. These universities, like Buckingham, for example, will implement something else. But what it does do is that it gives you a bit of freedom and flexibility so that if the UCAT didn't go to plan, it hasn't automatically ruled out medicine altogether. We have two other questions, and then we'll have to call it for there. But you've got our contact details, and you can reach out to us after the call today. We have a student who's asking, can you apply to two majors at the same university? Kay, I'd be quite
Yeah,
keen to hear from you here. So if you
yeah.
were to see a student applying to Worcester twice, or
Yes, we
from your
do
previous
that. We do see
experience,
that.
yeah,
Yeah, we do see that. And we don't make a judgment. It doesn't affect you could apply to nursing, physician associate and medicine if you were desperate to come to Worcester. That would not be an unreasonable thing to do. And it wouldn't make me judge you thinking to myself, oh, they don't really want to do medicine. No. So you can apply to two majors. I think if you applied to two French degrees and two medical degrees, I think I can only speak for Worcester. That would be fine, but I don't know how other medical schools would view that. That might look a little bit odd. But we frequently get people, and it flags up on our system. It says something like second application in progress. People applied to PA and medicine. Yeah.
yeah. So it's noted, and it's then a subjective factor as to how universities in turn want to deal with that separately. Brilliant. And the final question then is, does doing the IB instead of A levels have an effect of getting accepted? The answer is no, because there are genuine equivalences, and the IB is a very well known qualification. So I really feel like with 99% certainty, there is no difference apart from the obvious, which is the grading scale being different and maybe an expectation of certain qualifications being needed. So in the very unlikely event that math might be required, I'm thinking places like Oxford might sometimes mention math. They might need AA rather than AI, for example. But usually speaking, they'll want to look at your biology and chemistry at HL. Likewise, often biology and chemistry for A level. But beyond that, there's no difference. The real differentiator is the UCAT that everybody takes regardless of their examinations. So we'll leave it there for today then. Thank you all so very much for joining us today. If there are further questions, please do not hesitate to email them in, or when you book a complimentary consultation, to ask the questions then, and we'll be very happy to help you after the call today. So thank you so very much again to Professor Kay Mohanna. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been a wonderful hour spent speaking with our students here about applying to university. Do you have any final words, Kay?
No, lovely to meet you too, Hayley, and very, very best wishes to all of you. What all medical schools want is that students become the best doctor they can be, and that will depend on where you apply, making sure it matches to your aptitude and your style and where you will flourish. And if that happens to be Worcester, then that's great.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, thank you
Thanks
all
very
so very
much.
much. Thank you so much for your time, all. And yeah, look forward to speaking to some of you soon. Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.
There we go. Thanks, Hayley. That went very well. Thanks for your
Yeah,
help.
that's okay. Thank you so very much. Bye, Kay. Bye,
Enjoy
all.
your swimming.
Thank you. Bye.